Welcome back, everybody. This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, and continuing the segment of where to begin reading, we're going to be talking about The Dark Knight. That's right, today we're going to be talking about where to start reading Batman in collected editions for beginners. So, let's get started. Welcome back, everybody. Now, last month I got to kick off this segment with Spider-Man. It's a segment that you all have been wanting me to do for years, and today I get to continue that segment with Batman. So we are going to be talking about where to start reading Batman for beginners in collected editions. This is for people that enjoy the movies, the Arkham Asylum games, any of the video games, or the animated series. Now, I'm mainly sticking to the main canon line, and I say that, man, I won't get into detail about DC continuity. It's a lot different than Marvel continuity with the different crises that they've had and restarting and revamping their universes. So I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. Perhaps one day I can talk about DC and the different crises they've had. Is that the plural for crisis? Crises? I think so. Sure. In a separate segment. But today I'm going to just simplify it and focus on a few stories of where I think is the best place to start reading Batman for beginners. And then, of course, also include alternate timelines. So I am sticking to the main timelines. Alternate timelines I'll leave for the end of the video. And then we can talk about what our first Batman comic was for those of you that have been reading Batman. And please, by all means, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you would have added, what you would have taken away, what you thought I was crazy for adding in here. But let's go ahead and get started. Now, for you completists, of course, I'm starting at the very beginning with Batman the Golden Age, Volume 1. Available in omnibus format, available in archive format, available in trade paperback format, and I know available in digital format. So if you want to go back and read where it all started, long before he became the Caped Crusader, the Dark Knight, to see the origins of the Batcave, to see the origins of Batman, Bruce Wayne, and to see the evolution of the costume, well, you got no other place to go but the very, very, very beginning in 1939 with Detective Comics number 27 by Bill Finger and Bob Kane. It is written in the Golden Age, though, so it's a little bit different. So if you're not used to that kind of writing, I will say it's a little bit dialogue heavy, but completely worth it, especially if you're a purist and historian of comics, or you want to go back and you can't help it but start at the very beginning. Of course, that is the best place for you to start, and you don't need to watch the rest of this video. But don't forget to hit like before you leave, though. Batman Year 1. We're going to fast forward some years from 1939. We're going to go all the way to 1987. The post-crisis retelling and modernization of Batman's origin. This is the definitive Batman origin. To this day, they still use it as part of canon. And this is Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli's just wonderful and brilliant work in not just the origin of Bruce Wayne becoming Batman, but also the coming of Jim Gordon, who was a rookie cop, to the Gotham Police Department. And both of them are trying to eradicate crime. One by becoming a mass vigilante, and the other one by becoming a great police officer and trying to clean out the police force in Gotham. This is a masterpiece, available in absolute editions, deluxe editions, trade paperback editions, hardcover editions. This book has been printed in so many formats. I will say that the absolute is the only way, and please correct me if I'm wrong, to get both the original colors and the new colors in it. So if you want to have the original colors, you may try to find an old trade paperback, because most of the recent printings have had the modernization colors. But if you want both colors, the absolute is the way to go. The Killing Joke. This was supposed to be a non-canon story, but DC and readers enjoyed it so much that they decided to keep it as part of Batman canon. And but what I mean by canon, when I'm saying canon, is that it is part of Batman's continuity. Not just Batman, because this also affects other characters. Now, this is a complete standalone story. It can be read on its own. It is written by Alan Moore, and it is drawn by Brian Boland. And it features one of Batman's greatest and most influential confrontations with the Joker. So if you want to see a broad understanding of what makes Batman Batman and Joker the Joker, what makes this yin and yang work, this is the place to go. And it's one that I've recommended to friends, and all of them have been hooked. and want to keep reading more Batman stories. Much like Batman Year One and Absolute Edition, it has both the original colors and the new colors. Also collected in deluxe edition, hardcover, trade paperback, and standard size hardcovers. Nightfall. Now, I know you're probably wondering why the hell is Nightfall on this list, considering Bruce Wayne loses his biggest fight in this story, and then somebody else takes the mantle of Batman. Well, the thing that people forget, or maybe they don't want to remember, or they weren't around at the time collecting comics, was that this particular series was meant to sell comics. This book was meant to get new readers interested in Batman. People that have never heard of Batman in comics but have seen the movies or the 1966 series were interested in how this mighty character could fall at the hands of a new villain. And of course I'm talking about Bane. So he is introduced through these pages. And I think this is a great introduction to Bruce Wayne and what makes him tick and the things that he's willing to do and lose for the safety of Gotham City. This is available in omnibus formats, big thick trade paperbacks, a 25th anniversary trade paperback. Now, one thing I will say that is very crucial to the story that is not collected in the Omnis or any of the trade paperbacks with the Nightfall logo on it is the Sword of Azrael miniseries. That's collected in a trade paperback, but it's never been collected in a Nightfall saga collection. I don't know why, but I find it interesting that that's not been collected because that's where the character of Jean-Paul Valley is introduced. So, Batman, The Long Halloween. This is a classic noir story from Jeff Loeb and Tim Sell about the rise and fall of Harvey Dent. Now, if you don't know who Harvey Dent is, if you've not seen the movies or has seen the animated show or even played the games, then the least I say about the character, the better off you are. But this takes us back to what it felt like for Batman to be around those mobsters. So this is before the big super criminals, the super villains, took over Gotham. But they are all in there, so it's a mystery of who done it. Set in the early days of Batman's career, the Dark Knight teams up with Jim Gordon and District Attorney Harvey Dent to stop this mysterious killer known as Holiday. Nobody knows who this murderer is, but each holiday they leave behind a new victim. And of course, most of the victims have something to do with the mob that is ruling Gotham. So even if you read this as a follow-up to Year One, because this technically is Year Two, strongly recommended. Even if this is your first Batman story to read. You've got a lot of appearances in here from Batman's Rogue Gallery. And that's what makes this one fun. So if you want to get to know these characters pretty quickly, this is the best way to do it. Available in absolute format, trade paperback, deluxe edition. As of this video, it's not out yet, but it is coming. Hardcover editions. There's an omnibus of Jeff Loeb that also includes Stark Victory and Haunted Knight. So keep an eye out for it. Definitely recommend this one. JLA, Tower of Babel. Years ago, I made my list of my favorite JLA stories, or Justice League stories. And holy crap, this is my number one. I've been a huge fan of the Tower of Babel for years. But the more you read it, the more you realize it's a Batman story. So to me, the greatest Justice League story is also one of the best Batman stories. Mark Waid and Howard Porter tell the story of how each of the Justice League members is taken down one by one, and all due to a villain using Batman's files. You see, on his spare time, Batman creates files for each of his team members, and say they were to go crazy and try to take over the world, he creates protocols on how he would take each of them down. So the villain gets a hold of these files. And holy crap, how badass is that Batman on his spare time is figuring out how to take out his friends. So this is Batman taken out of Gotham and how he is a superhero right up along with Superman and Wonder Woman and how they relate to him. So this is an interesting dynamic and a lot different than the other Batman stories. And I figured if for people that want to see him work as a member of a team, if they enjoyed the Justice League movie or the Justice League cartoon, then this is the best story to introduce them to the character of Batman. Hush. Now you've seen Jeff Loeb's name earlier with Long Halloween, but I had to bring it back with Batman Hush. This is drawn by the phenomenal Jim Lee, the gentleman that put X-Men on the map for a lot of people in the 90s, and that dynamic art style of his just firing on all cylinders and teaming up with Jeff Loeb. Now, in this particular story, it's about a mysterious bandaged new villain that's manipulating villains in Batman's life. Not just villains, but just people around Bruce Wayne's life. So this sets up Batman for one of his biggest mysteries. Then there's this whole romance building between Batman and Catwoman. Will they, won't they kind of deal that we've seen before. And to me, this feels like a new reader-friendly introduction to a lot of Batman's villains. So while Jeff Loeb is crafting this story with lots of twists that makes you second-guess who to trust, Jim Lee is drawing the most dynamic images of Batman that people use for posters, for video games, whatever. His art is amazing in this. Available in an absolute format, available in deluxe editions, available in standard size hardcovers, trade paperbacks, single issues, of course, and digitally, but any way you can read this. If you want to get into Batman, if you're familiar with Jim Lee's work because you enjoyed his Marvel work and you've never read a DC comic, this is the best way to get into the character of Batman and all his rogue gallery that he has. Gotham Central. Now, this is Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker bringing their A game to spotlight on the men and women of the Gotham Police Department. So this is a lot different than a Batman comic, and some of you are probably asking, why am I adding this on this list? It hardly ever features Batman. But see, I don't think that's true, because the more you read it, you see that these characters, these police officers, whether it's the night shift or the day shift, are always working in the shadow of Batman. There are scenes where they're like, well, maybe we should call Batman in. We might need his help. Some of them are like, no, we can find whoever did this by ourselves. We don't need Batman's help. There are scenes where some of them are trying to figure out how to turn on the bat signal, how it works with, well, during this time, Commissioner Gordon is not there to help them out, and I'll leave you to find out exactly why. But all of this is just a standalone story that can be read on its own. You don't even need to follow the adventures of Batman. It's just such a phenomenal story. One of my top 10 favorite omnibus I do own. So it is available in omnibus format. There's a reprint coming in 2022. It's available in trade paperbacks, standard size hardcover editions, 2 big thick complete editions, but completely worth it if you're a fan of the crime stories that Ed Brubaker has done or just crime TV shows. This is it. It's great. The Wire. If you're a fan of The Wire, then this is for you. The Man Who Laughs. Now, this is a story by Ed Brubaker, and it's drawn by Doug Mahnke. So Ed Brubaker I just talked about in Gotham Central. But this takes off right after year 1 ends. And it is a modernization and retelling, sort of Batman and Joker's first meet. So you see both opposing forces, Batman, the Dark Knight of Gotham, and Joker, this man who laughs, come at each other for the first time in this particular story. It's done in a flashback sequence, and then you also see what's going on in present time, but it is freaking phenomenal. It is a very quick read, but after reading it, you get a better understanding of who Batman is supposed to be and who Joker is to Batman, but also what Jim Gordon means to both of these characters. Recently released as a deluxe edition, there's been trade paperbacks, a hardcover edition, and hopefully one day we'll get an absolute edition of this because it rightly needs one. Batman by Grant Morrison. Now, Grant Morrison brings the saga and celebrates all of the history of Batman and puts it together into one story. And I think it's a phenomenal job of doing that and slowly getting you there, because you kick it off with the Son of the Demon story. So he introduces us to this character named Damian Wayne, and you can find out why he has that last name for yourself and who he is in Batman's life. But slowly he builds this whole mythos of Batman and kind of retcons a lot of the way that you think Bruce Wayne is supposed to be and think. So if you want a smarter read, I think Morrison's Batman is the best place to go. Sometimes you're going to be reading that stuff. By the time you get to Batman, Rest in Peace, you're going to be completely confused, and that's okay. It's normal. But it's part of the fun of reading comics, I think, because then you want to seek out Final Crisis. Then after Final Crisis, you'll want to know more and go seek out Fourth World. That's the way this works. It's books that get you hooked and make you go and read something else. And Fourth World isn't even written by Grant Morrison. That one's all Jack Kirby, but it influences so many things in Final Crisis. But it all starts with that Son of the Demon story, with the introduction of Damian Wayne. So if you want a more deeper, philosophical, read between the lines of every sentence story, then look no further than Grant Morrison's Batman. Batman and Robin by Peter Tomasi. Now, this is a character-driven story about a troubled father and son. So during this time, Bruce Wayne is Batman, and his son, whomever that will be, you can find out for yourself, is Robin. And we've seen him with sidekicks before. We've seen him with Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, Stephanie Brown, but never has any of them been, his blood, even though he does treat them as his own children and eventually adopts them, some of them. But to have his own son become Robin and put his life in danger, this is just a different side of Batman. It's a completely side of Batman. This is one I'm recommending to people that have kids or have nieces, nephews, whatever, because you see a side of Batman that you know where he's coming from. He needs to be a stern father to this character, but also let him loose because he knows that this character needs to grow. His son needs to grow. It's a Bruce Wayne Batman that is more open with his feelings in these particular stories, and I love that about him. It makes him more relatable and more human. So again, for anybody that has kids, 100% recommending it to you all. Available in an omnibus format, available in trade paperback formats, standard size hardcovers, and the omnibus is out of print as of this video, but it did have a stealth reprint a couple of months ago, so hopefully they'll do that again. Court of Owls. Now, after the event known as Flashpoint, the DC Universe decided to revamp and start over with a lot of their characters, restarting their origins. Batman really didn't have a complete restart, per se. There are some things that were changed in this past, but that's, like I said, a completely different video. This is Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo coming in and taking Batman and introducing him to new readers. And the way they do it is by just throwing away the idea of an origin and saying, okay, we'll just assume everybody knows that Bruce Wayne's parents were murder in Crime Alley and he's been Batman for a while. We'll leave it at that. And that's it. So that's what makes this story work, because you don't get told the origin of Batman like you have been in every movie or animated show or video game. You jump right into Bruce Wayne having been Batman for a few years. And this Batman knows Gotham City like the back of his hand, and there aren't many secrets the city can keep from him. So how the hell can a secret society known as the Court of Owls be operating from under his nose? So you see, one step at a time, how the Dark Knight solves this mystery that he didn't even know existed in this huge blockbuster of a story by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. And Capullo's artwork is phenomenal in this. So some of these aren't available in absolute format. There are 2-volume omnibus formats, and of course trade paperbacks and standard size hardcovers. There's box sets, deluxe editions of these stories, but Court of Owls, 100%, it will get you hooked. Rise of the Batman. So James Tynion takes over the reign of writing Detective Comics during the Rebirth era. And Detective Comics gets the legacy number, so it goes back to that original number. So now we're past 1,000 issues of Detective Comics. So Detective Comics has started all the way back in the 30s. We got the original number system back. But what that means for readers that are trying to get into Batman, absolutely nothing. But here's why I added it to the list. Because this shows a side of Batman that you haven't seen. You've seen him team up with sidekicks. You've seen him team up with his son. You've seen him team up with godlike, superpowered heroes in the DC Universe, in the Justice League. But you've never seen him lead his own team of a Bat family, and that's what this is. Batman decides to recruit and lead young vigilantes in Gotham, and Batman decides to recruit and lead young vigilantes and train them to be a team worthy to face any villain that comes to Gotham. So this team includes Robin, Spoiler, Batwoman, Orphan, Azrael, and Clayface. And damn, how does James Tynion do it? He makes you care about Clayface. The main, Clayface, I didn't give a crap about Clayface, even through the animated series. He had a heartbreaking story, sure. But there never has been a story where I was like, oh man, poor Clayface. And there have been several Clayfaces. But for some reason, it makes it work here. You feel for the characters when they lose something. Oh man, this is a great story, and it's about the importance of Bat Family. So most of the artwork in here is done by Eddie Barros. It is available in deluxe editions and trade paperback editions, standard size hardcovers, and there is an omnibus. It's called The Rise and Fall of the Batman. Now, for some alternate timeline stories that might get people hooked. So I added these on here as just extras because these stories are standalone stories that for some reason might hook somebody that wants to get into the comics. So kicking it off with Batman 66. So if they're fans of the 1960s series, the campy, goofy Batman with the sound effects and Egghead, for some reason I just remember Vincent Price's Egghead. But anyway, if they're fans of that era, then this is the book to get them hooked into reading comics. It's campy, it's goofy, doesn't take itself seriously, but it's a fun book. Available in trade paperbacks and an omnibus format. Gotham by Gaslight. Steampunk Batman. Do I need to say anything else? Okay, Mike Mignola on artwork with this dark and gritty retelling of Jack the Ripper, perhaps versus Batman. That's all I will say. Again, an Elseworld tale is not canon, but it is a fun story that might get someone hooked. Batman Earth 1. This is by Jeff Jones and Gary Frank. And again, a retelling of Batman in a non-canon story. So this takes place in an alternate reality, Earth 1. It could be this particular Earth. And with Volume 1, there are no other superheroes. It's just Batman donning a very realistic looking cloth costume and not being really good at being Batman. As a matter of fact, he gets his ass handed to him and falls quite often. So I like that about that story. And it makes it real. And I know it sounds silly saying this is a realistic story when I'm talking about comics, but it really does feel real. Batman Adventures. Now, this is for anybody that watched the animated series. What the Adventure Comics did was take some of those stories and put them into comic book format, and then they had original stories. So Bruce Timm helped out a lot. Paul Dini wrote some of them, and it's a wonderful, I don't want to say lighthearted, it looks lighter than what you would see in perhaps Gotham by Gaslight is what I meant, but phenomenal stories and lots of fun, and could be a segue to get people to read the comics. And last but not least, of course, The Dark Knight Returns. Of course that's going to be on this list. If Year One is the very first story to read, then The Dark Knight Returns is the final bookend to the Batman legacy. Frank Miller, 1986. Oh my gosh. It's a completely different look on what a possible future could be. Basically because, well, we've had several stories after that. But really, this is what made Batman dark and gritty. The Batman that you see post-crisis is because of the popularity of this Batman. A retired Batman, Bruce Wayne, decides he can't live in this world of Gotham. So he decides to put the Batman costume on one more time and go back and take his city back from mutants. It's a classic story. It's been released in, I think, 2 animated films, but deluxe editions, absolute editions, trade paperbacks, and just about any format available. Phenomenal, 100% worth checking out. If it's your, it's weird to say that this being a possible future Batman, the last Batman story, even though there were sequels, but let's not talk about those, should be your first introduction to the character, but it's just got that dark and grittiness that I think a lot of people really would enjoy. Now, some of these books are available from our sponsors. If you live in Europe and are interested in pre-ordering or purchasing Omnis, then you should definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices for Marvel and DC big books within the EU. Flat shipping of €9.90 for EU countries. Extremely careful and sturdy packaging. Emails are answered within 24 hours. And they have a superb selection of new releases and out-of-print books on their website. Just head over to waltscomicshop.com for more great deals and rare titles. And for a limited time, you can use the code Near Mint Condition, all one word, at the checkout for free shipping to all EU countries with your first order. Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They pride themselves on packaging your books so they arrive safely in an excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. Check out the bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. CGN is excited to announce that they are now taking pre-orders. They're making it easier for you to ensure that you don't miss out on the hottest releases. CGN is currently running a special promotion for your Minties. If you're a first-time customer, let them know that you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. This promotion is valid for U.S. customers only. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount and quality shipping and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was my list. I'd love to know what your list would be. Please leave them down below as far as what books beginners should read, what should be the very first book they should read, and then what out of my list you would take out. Believe me, it was really difficult. Should I put Arkham Asylum in here? What about Death in the Family? Because that really shows Batman lose for the first time. So I really put a lot of thought into these lists, as I always do. By the way, one last question. What was your first Batman comic? For me, Batman 401. That was the first comic I bought. Why? I don't know. I think it was part of the DC Legends. Magpie? Yeah, Magpie. I didn't go with year one. I went with Magpie. Anyway, leave the comment down below. Let me know what your first Batman comic was. Or if out of this list, which one you're going to pick up if you have not read Batman in comic format. Again, this was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, ring that bell for notifications. Big thank you to our Patreon. Couldn't make videos without you all possible. So thank you all. And more importantly, everyone, stay healthy, stay safe out there. Much love.